Hi, it's Rabbi Aaron Bergman again, and I'm very happy to welcome you to part 2 of 2-Minute Mysticism, where I talk for 2 minutes about ideas about Jewish mysticism, no matter how long it takes me. If you'll notice, I am using my notes today. Part of that is really just to keep my arms from waving around. I tend to talk with my hands, which works on a big beam, but doesn't work so well on a little camera. Today is part 2. Part 1 of 2-Minute Mysticism was about the idea of finding balance. What I'd like to talk about today is what happens when you cannot find your balance, when everything just seems to be falling apart, when everything just goes to pieces. So we're going to talk today a bit about the idea of Lurianic Kabbalah. This is named after Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is normally portrayed as a very wise old man, like this. But in fact, he passed away at the age of 38. He lived from 1534 to 1572 in Sfat, which is in northern Israel. Now, one of the reasons that northern Israel became the center of Jewish mysticism was actually the expulsion from Spain in 1492, which was one of the most devastating moments in Jewish history. A lot of Jews made their way up into Israel. They settled in the town of Tzfat, which did a lot of trade. And that's where Isaac Luria lived, and he developed some really important ideas about Jewish mysticism. He tried to answer some very difficult questions. First is, if God is infinite, how is there room for anything else? If God is everywhere, where can we be? The other question, though, is why is the world such a mess? Is it on purpose? Is there anything we can do about it? So these are some of the things that Rabbi Luria talks about. In terms of making room for us, there's an idea called Tzimtzum. That God, who is infinite, contracted within and allowed there to be space for the world to be. I think there's a very powerful idea that even God got out of the way to make room for others, which says something about maybe where our egos should be occasionally. And Rabbi Luria continues, though, that God tries to fill the space with light and creates these vessels like this that are filled with light, but the light can't contain it, and they shatter and wind up looking something like this. Now, very often this is kind of what our lives feel like. We think they're whole, we think they're perfect, or even worse, we think we can make them that way, but things sometimes fall apart. Well, they even fall apart for God as well, which in a way is kind of reassuring. So there is an idea in Jewish mysticism that these shards, called klipot, are part of the shattered vessels, and they fall to earth, but every single one of these shards contains a piece of God's light. That they're not just broken pieces, but they're broken pieces that are filled with light. And Rabbi Luria says that it's our job to try to find that light and to recover the light and to send it back to God, to help everything be repaired, fixed, recreated. And that's where we get the phrase Tikkun Olam, to repair the world in a very mystical way, to make things better on earth, but by doing so, it makes things better in heaven. The idea is, according to Rabbi Luria, is that if you do a lot of the mitzvot, if you do acts of kindness, if you do the rituals, if you do acts of charity, if you do anything to make the world better, that is a form of redemption. That's a way of making the world whole. That's a way of making God whole as well. And I think there's a beautiful image in this idea of the broken pieces. If you think of what a mosaic is, it's little broken pieces put together to make a beautiful picture. Each piece is still broken, but together it's beautiful. And I think that that's kind of who we are. And if you think about Judaism, we got the Torah from Moses, which means it's a mosaic religion. So the idea of the laws of Moses, but also the mosaic of beautiful broken pieces all put together. So the idea here is that God has created a world for us to fix, to be partners with God in making things beautiful. Not that everything can be whole, not that things can be perfect, but together they can be beautiful. They can be something very meaningful. And I'm just going to conclude with a line from that great Kabbalist Leonard Cohen. He said, "There's a crack in everything, but that's how the light gets in." So even when the world feels broken, acts of kindness can make it feel whole again.